Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for attending the Nonprofit Exchange's monthly webinars, where every other month we bring in a nonprofit from around the world to talk about technology use in regards to fundraising or capacity building. So just to kick off the show, because I know we're starting a little late as we're allowing people to still trickle in, I'm going to introduce Tim Whitacre with News Story. And he's going to talk a little bit about how they use blockchain technology and NFTs to help with their fundraising, their mission. All right, I'll kick it off to you, Tim.
Thanks, John. Happy to be here. Let me share my screen here. All right. Cool. I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of News Story and talk a little bit about like where we came from, what we do, what our focus is, and which leads directly into our like what we're doing on the blockchain and some of the reasonings why and how it was kind of like just a natural progression for our organization. So News Story. So we're a Y Combinator-backed nonprofit building homes for those who need them most. So we launched in about 2015. So we're about 7 years. We'll celebrate 7 years a little bit later this year. From the very beginnings, our organization has really focused on technology and innovation. Just knowing that like the problem we're trying to tackle is so massive, and without something like technology, which is a force multiplier, we just wouldn't be able to do this. And why homes? Well, the reality is that we believe a home changes everything. You are all from nonprofits, and so you understand that like there's a lot of different needs. We picked this one because we felt like it was one that there could be some new innovations in. We believe that income, health, education, safety all stem out of having a solid home to go home to. So a little bit about our history. So our impact over the last couple of years, we've built 2,500 homes, and we've impacted over 14,000 lives. One of the unique things about how we work is we don't build single homes, we build communities. And we've built 38 communities throughout Haiti, Bolivia, Mexico, and El Salvador. And currently we are focused working directly in Latin America, mainly Mexico and mainly El Salvador. So one of our core missions at News Story is that we pioneer solutions in global homelessness. I talked about this a minute ago, thinking through new ways to attack the problem. There's nothing wrong with the old model of raising money and building homes for people in need, raising money and figuring out how to like provide shelter. It's super important. But we feel like there are ways that we can make that more efficient, make that faster, and even make that cheaper. And so at News Story, we still do what we call direct builds, which is raising money through philanthropy. And we work with partners on the ground in Mexico and El Salvador, and we build homes. So money, home, kind of a simple solution. But we also realize that there's probably a lot of other things that will allow us to go faster. And so when I was hired about 4 years ago, one of the first things that my team worked on was we worked on building a tool called Felix, which is essentially it's News Story's data warehouse. It is a data tool that allows us to collect information about the families before we work with them, to make sure that we are actually providing homes for families that need them the most. But it also allows us to track impact over time, right? So just with any other need-based nonprofit, if we go into somebody, if we go in and intervene and we provide somebody a home and a community, and then we track the impact that had over the course of a year, 5 years later, and nothing about their life is better, then we have a problem. Like we're not doing something correctly. And so, but we needed a way to track that. And a lot of the tools that were out there did not exist. And so this was really one of News Story's first kind of ideas of bringing innovation to the nonprofit and to the housing sector. And so we built this tool. It is a data warehouse, and then we have an offline mobile app that works, in the ruralist of countries without internet. And then it syncs back up once you get back to a signal. And we have numerous other nonprofits use this as well, from Habitat for Humanity and lots of other large housing organizations. And then another thing that we're also known for is our 3D home printing. So back in 2016, 2017, we partnered with an organization called Icon, which is out of Texas. And then at the end of 2020, or the end of 2019 into 2020, we built the world's first 3D community, the world's first community of 3D printed houses. And if you want to see more about that, there is a documentary on Apple TV. There's a documentary called Home, and we are in the last episode of that show. But this was another one of those things that we realized that we could, we actually can print a house in about 48 hours. And the material is about half the cost of what it would take to do traditional builds. And the goal with that is that it's only going to come down. And so that's just another one of the ways that we've been looking at pioneering solutions. Now, what you're here for is like moving into this idea of like blockchain technology. And so one of the things we've been working on for a while, and we recently partnered with an organization called Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador. As you know, El Salvador was one of the first countries to actually put Bitcoin as one of their actual currencies. And so we're using Bitcoin and a network called the Lightning Network in El Salvador to help unbanked families in El Salvador become homeowners. A lot of families don't have the necessary means to have a traditional bank, but almost everybody that we interact with has a mobile phone. And if you have a mobile phone, you can have a Bitcoin wallet, and you can pay your mortgage back through that. And by doing that, because it's on the blockchain, it's recorded, so you have history. And so now we're actually pushing to allow families to build a credit history, which will allow them to get loans and other things in the future, which they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And then the last thing that we've most recently worked on is the NFT collection that we launched. And so this was our second kind of experiment in blockchain. And we had this idea of, what if we could sell an NFT and have one NFT equal one house in the real life. And so we created a collection of NFTs, and we launched our first collection back in December, and we sold out in about 48 hours. And then we launched our second collection at the end in January of this year. And so each one of these houses will each one of these NFTs will provide an actual house for a family in need somewhere in Mexico or El Salvador. And so that's just a little bit of the history of, kind of where we've been. And we have a lot of other things that we're working on right now on the blockchain and and just through some other innovations through construction technology. And we're even investing in some organizations that are doing some innovations inside of the construction space, and hoping that those will all play into some new things that we work on. So that is a little bit about New Story, and that's kind of where we have, that's kind of where we stemmed from. It's how we got into blockchain. It's how we got into these different types of technology. And I would love to open it up and just hear a little bit of what questions I could answer, and if there's any specifics around the blockchain stuff or NFTs that I could talk about. If your organization is considering to go into it, I would be happy to share some of our findings and some of the easy things, but also the hard things we learned along the way.
Feel free to drop your messages in the chat or the Q&A, and we can start sorting. And I'll kick off with one question I've been wondering. Do you treat the NFTs as a donation when someone makes a purchase, or do you have to treat it as an item that's purchased with sales tax?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it actually it depends on the state. There are different state laws around that. So if you go to, so the first collection we listed on OpenSea, if you bought it directly from OpenSea, which for those of you that might not know, OpenSea is a marketplace for NFTs. If you bought it there, that is considered a purchase. And so the purchaser did not get a tax write-off. We were very clear about that up front. However, one of the things that we did for our second collection is we allowed people to make a donation through our donation platform, which we also built in-house. And then through their donation, if they made a donation worth 2 Ethereum, which is what we listed the houses for, then we would airdrop the NFT to them, and they would also be able to capture a tax receipt for that as well, because it was through their donation site. It's a good question. So technically, you're allowed to do that as long as it just depends on how the transaction happens. Question here. I really don't understand blockchains. Can you explain in layman's terms? Yeah. So essentially, a blockchain, and I'm definitely not a blockchain expert, but I will give you, like, as far as how I understand it. The blockchain is essentially a large ledger, and a term that is often thrown around with blockchain is decentralization. What that means is that, you know, anybody who interacts with the blockchain is essentially like adding a little bit of power to it, so that way, so it doesn't live in a central place. It's not housed in one server somewhere. It's housed kind of like decentrally everywhere. What that means is, and so when a blockchain transaction happens, whether something is changing hands, somebody is purchasing some cryptocurrency, or anything that happens on the blockchain, there's all kinds of different ways that could happen. The transaction has to happen. And so there are people that are essentially like, you've probably heard the term like mining Bitcoin, or, you know, people that are like mining Ethereum. What they are doing is they are actually helping make the transactions on the blockchain. So it's this decentralized ledger. That means that anything that happens is all happening all in transparent. You can go and see, like, you can see all the transactions that a certain wallet has made. Everybody has a wallet. And yeah, I don't know if I'm doing a super good job of explaining it, but yeah, high level, it's just a decentralized ledger. People can watch their wallet transactions across that, which allows for a lot of, like, you can still have anonymity, but it also allows for, like, the ability to prove that you own something because you have access to that wallet, if that makes sense.
And right now, what are you doing with the Ethereum that is coming in from the revenue generated? Are you guys cashing it out immediately? Do you guys hold on to it on a cold wallet, or is it stored on some type of like Coinbase or something?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have, because of all the different projects, and like, there's, you know, one of the things that, you know, you kind of realize the hard way when you get into this is that, you know, some services accept these wallets and accept these wallets, and a wallet is a wallet, but there's different, like, custodians of the wallet, I guess is the best term. And so when we sell one of the NFTs, or we get a crypto donation, what news stories, what our, like, philosophy is right now is that we will immediately convert 80% of that donation or purchase or sale to you know, to USD, right, to dollars, so that we can utilize that. Just because of the volatility of the network, we want to be, you know, transparent with the money that our donors give us. And so, however, we do say up front that we will keep 20% of it, you know, in that cryptocurrency, knowing that, like, that could do something for us. And so that's kind of what we've done. And the nice thing too about the NFTs is, so all the NFTs that we sold, like that, take that first collection, for example, there was 10 in the first collection. We sold them for 2 Ethereum each. So we had 20 Ethereum at the end of that. And then we cashed out 80% of that. So 16. And then we left 4 Ethereum, you know, in our wallet. And so what that allowed us to do is allowed us to like, and that was enough money to like do the work that we said we would do. And then we would cover the rest with like money that we had in case, you know, Ethereum went down, which we cashed out most of that stuff before Ethereum went down, which was good. But then the other thing to know about NFTs, especially through like OpenSea, is that any secondary sales, we get 10% of that. So if somebody bought our, you know, so for instance, somebody did buy one of the houses for 2 Ethereum and they relisted it for 10. If they sell that, we get 1 Ethereum off of that. If then the next person sells it for 50, we get 5 Ethereum. And so it kind of just like keeps going through that. So yeah, so that's what we have done. That's what we've done with the money that's come in. And then also you did ask me about wallets. So we do have Coinbase wallet, we have MetaMask, we use Gemini, we use a couple different services, again, depending on what we need it for. But then we also do use cold storage as well. Like we have hardware wallets that we will transfer the money to that we want to store long-term. And we have like a really like secure setup for how we do all of that. And like, if somebody wants to know more about that, I can share a little about that offline, but I don't want to talk too much about that, about our security practices on here. I do see there's another question. Yeah, go ahead.
They have another question from the audience is do you know any other nonprofits that are using NFTs for fundraising?
So there have been a few examples that we've seen that we actually modeled some of our stuff after. I don't remember the name of the nonprofit, but there was one that was doing something for food relief after a natural disaster, and they sold NFTs of grains of rice. Each grain of rice would provide a meal for a family for a month, I think it was. I can look that up and send it over. I don't even know what I would search for. I have it in my research folder somewhere. But since then, I mean, this is probably the 5th like conversation that I've had with nonprofit groups. And I know that a lot of people are talking about it and thinking about it. We recently just we're working on right now a project with Feed the Children and Charity Water. So there are some different, nonprofits out there that are doing it. But honestly, as a whole, so I will say too, like, one of the things that I know has been a barrier for a lot of nonprofits has been just like the red tape that they have to get through, especially from the finance side, knowing about, thinking through donations and tax receipts and all of that. So I don't know if I could point you to any examples other than the ones I just shared.
And can you, I don't know if you have your store handy, can you walk us through a little bit about what goes into setting up the store on OpenSea and how you chose, I guess, the randomization for the digital houses?
Sure. Yeah. So so here is this is our OpenSea account. You can see some of the ones that we've created. We had 2 collections. So we actually, because of the fact that our first collection was 10 and our second collection was 20 NFTs, we actually did not do randomization. Each one was hand done by an artist. His name is Brian Koo. And so he did each one, and part of the reason for doing that, I think generative ones are totally fine. Part of the reason we wanted to do that is we wanted to have a little more control and the uniqueness of them. And we have, so these ones here have the lines for 3D printing. We have different flowers that are unique to the different countries that we work in. So each one is hand done. Setting up a OpenSea account is pretty simple. Just like anything else, create an account, but you have to have the first thing you would have to set up is you need to set up a wallet, right? So you have to have a crypto wallet, specifically an Ethereum wallet, since NFTs are sold on the Ethereum blockchain. There are some like sub Ethereum based blockchains, like ours are listed on the Polygon blockchain, but that's an Ethereum based blockchain. And I can talk a little bit more about why we chose Polygon. There's more now. I mean, we launched this back in December, and in the last 5 months, like there's been so many changes in this space. And so it's a lot to keep up with, but you set up your wallet, you connect your wallet, set up your account. And then the way that it works is once you create the design and you have the file that you want to sell, you have to have like characteristics about it. So for instance, if you go into one of these, let me do one that had flowers. So if you go into one of these, you'll notice that like, it has a country trait, it has the color of a door, the color, the feature is this celosia, which is the flower. It has a color of a roof, the house is 3D printed. And so there are, you have to set all of this stuff up. And then we also have like some content that is only revealed by the owner once they purchase it. And so, you kind of set all of that up. And then what you do is it's called minting, which that is the actual transaction to like timestamp that image onto the blockchain so that it becomes an NFT, a non-fungible token, one of its kind. And the minting is that's where it gets a little bit tricky because minting can cost money. So I don't know how deep you want me to go, but feel free to stop me if I'm going too deep.
No. If you could talk a little bit about minting, that's something that's.
So when you're minting, so there's like if you're on this call and you're a nonprofit and you want to launch an NFT collection, one of the one decision you'll have to make early on is like, will you mint them yourselves and list them, or will you like have the purchaser mint them? So what that means is when you're minting it, like I said, that's like the timestamp of like getting it onto the blockchain. Oftentimes that comes with what's called a gas fee. And so, it's funny talking about this because it all just sounds like a bunch of made up terms, but a gas fee is the cost to write a transaction to the blockchain. So I kind of talked about earlier, like, you have this ledger, this like decentralized ledger. Well, if you actually want to like write to the blockchain, something has to perform that action. And the Ethereum network specifically, Ethereum version 1, they're currently working on version 2, which is supposed to make this better. Ethereum 1 is like so overloaded with so many transactions that the cost has shot up. And so to actually mint this right now is actually not too bad. It probably costs like, as of a couple of days ago, maybe like $9 to mint this. Not a big deal. But if you're having a collection of 1,000, well, that's $9,000. At the time in December, Ethereum was through the roof on their gas fees, and it would have cost us about $180 just to mint a single one of these. Now we only had 10, but 180 times 10 is, way more than we wanted to spend. So that's why we decided to use the Polygon blockchain, which again is a subset of, of the Ethereum. It's like another network. And the Polygon network, because it's a lot less taxed, has a lot lower fees. Now, the issue you run into there is we listed on Polygon. And so if somebody wanted to buy one of our houses, they would have to first set up a wallet, add Ethereum to their wallet, and then convert Ethereum into Polygon, which is the currency that runs on the Polygon network. It's actually called Matic. And they would have to pay the gas fee to convert their money, which again is not cheap. And then they would have to purchase the home, which again on Polygon wouldn't cost them any fees. So we made the decision to mint on Polygon, which basically meant that like we had less overhead costs to get listed. but then the purchaser would have more costs to get the item. And since we were selling them for 2 Ethereum, which at the time Ethereum was roughly like $4,700, so it was like close to $9,000 to buy one of these NFTs. We thought, the customer, the purchaser spending an extra $150 or whatever was not, $180 was not that big of a deal. And we were right, it wasn't. So it just kind of depends on like the route you want to go. And then lastly, I will say the other route which is like minting, which is like having the purchaser mint. You would not actually come and mint and list them on OpenSea. You would actually have to set up a smart contract, which would be written in Ethereum. And then you would set up and there's some sites that would help you do this. And then they would randomly, they wouldn't be able to pick what they wanted. They would randomly mint one, and it would be generated in real time. So that's kind of getting back into the generative stuff, which again was also a reason we didn't want to do the minting that way. But that's just like, that goes down a whole nother rabbit hole, which I've done some of that, but that's, probably a lot beyond like this conversation, although I'm happy to talk about it.
I want to dive in a little on the unlockable content. What kind of, is it specific to the home that is being built, or do you do a story for each one sold? And is there follow-up after someone has bought it? Do they, has anyone requested to actually see the house that they've helped fund?
Yeah, so the unlockable content was actually nothing super crazy. It was information about the community that this home would fund, and then information with how to get in touch with us. And so, because of the fact that the blockchain, like it's an open ledger, but you can also be anonymous on there. After we sold our first 10, like we were only able to figure out who 7 of those owners were. Like there's 3 owners of those first 10 houses that we have no idea who they are, because they chose to remain anonymous. But we wanted to make sure there was a way for people to email us with proof that they actually own the home. And so then what we did is, this is the website we built for selling these. And so basically this is what you got. Like as soon as you bought it, you got immediate information of our contact information was inside of that revealed. And then we allowed them to opt in to getting updates along the way. And so they will actually be able to get updates on the specific house that they're NFT funded, if they opted in to reach out to us. We also would send them a proof of purchase and stuff like that, which again couldn't be used for tax deduction, but it would at least help them like deduct or like downplay some of their like crypto taxes if they were like big in the crypto space. And then we will like send them updates when the families move in and stuff like that. So there is some cool stuff that was attached to it. And so we've been able to have some, I've actually been able to like have some Zoom calls with some of the purchasers of the early collection, and just understand like, what motivated them to buy, like what they're interested in. Some of them actually donated more to us, and it's been like a really cool experience. So there's a couple questions.
Yeah, we have a question from the chat. What happens when an NFT is resold? Do you get a percentage of that?
Yeah. So you can set that up in OpenSea when you list. So I think the max you can do is 10%, which is what we did. So yeah, so if an NFT is resold, we get 10% of whatever the sold value is in perpetuity. So if that NFT is sold 1,000 times, each transaction, we get 10% of whatever the transaction is. So if it's sold for, $100, we get $10. If it's sold for $1, we get 10 cents. So, but it is kind of nice, which was one of the original intentions behind the NFTs, is that like people could like generate artwork that was then sold. And then, if the artist becomes more famous and his early paintings go way up in value, he still gets a cut from them. So that's kind of where that came from. Also, there's a question here for nonprofits that still have a lot of old-fashioned ways of operating. How would you recommend they slowly integrate this type of technology currency system? I would say that like one of the first things I would do is, which is actually one of the first things we did. So this is our donation platform that we built in-house, and we actually have a cryptocurrency donation on it. And so it allows people to donate, any one of the cryptocurrencies that we accept, which is about like 15 or so of them. And that was, we launched this probably about 2 years ago, and just to see what would happen. And we were surprised at how many crypto donations we got. And that was kind of that was all we needed to know, that hey, we don't know where they're coming from, but there is a bunch of people who are equally excited about cryptocurrencies, that are also excited about helping out this housing nonprofit. And so that's what actually pushed us into thinking more about the blockchain, which ultimately did push us into launching the NFT collection. So I would say this is the very first thing to do, and it's very simple. We built this probably in a couple of days. But there are even plugins. If your website runs on WordPress or something like that, or Squarespace, you can drop in crypto plugins in there and stuff that will allow you to do this. Because there's no actual nobody's adding a credit card or making a transaction. You just have to provide them your wallet ID, and they send that in. And then we just tell them hey, if you want a receipt, email this number, email this address with your wallet that you sent from, and we'll send you a receipt. It's actually pretty simple. And there are tools that make it easier, but that was the first thing we did, and it worked out really great for us. Have any of our NFTs sold again? No, they have not. And I think my guess is that the reason for that is that, the people I think we've had 1 or 2 people actually relist them for sale. Like I said, I think one guy listed them for 10 Ethereum. But we had one person who listed it for 500 Ethereum or something, which, at the time they listed it, I was, $10-20 million. And they just did that thinking that if they got it, they got it. But I think for the most part, most of the people that have invested in or have bought one of our NFTs did so because they wanted to know that they made a donation that provided a home for somebody, and now they got to track along with that story. So they wanted to be a part of the story, which is another huge part of the crypto blockchain world is how you look at it, and how you build community around the work that you're doing. And so the NFTs certainly helped us with that.
And what other plans do you guys have for your next sets? Is there anything you would do differently from the first 2 that you want to incorporate into these 3rd and 4th?
Yeah, so I don't know. So right now we have so many other things on our plate. We've talked about our 3rd collection a little bit. I think the one thing that we would like to do is go more of the community focused route and lower the price. So, the first one had a very intent purpose, which was one NFT provides one house. So we had to sell it for, roughly our houses are anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000 based on the technology to build them. And so we had to sell it for $6,000 to $10,000, which I don't know about you, but I don't just randomly have $10,000 I can donate to a nonprofit. And so we really wanted to provide a way. If we do another collection, it would probably be something that is much lower, that sells for maybe $100 to $200 or something, but then you would sell 1,000 of them, and then that way you'd be able to get a lot more community back behind it, which would just hopefully ultimately generate more interest in community around your nonprofit as a whole. So that's probably the conversations we've been talking about. When we will do that, I don't know. Crypto right now is taking a beating like the rest of the market. So, we'd be curious to see where it goes from here. We have partnered with another organization who's doing an NFT launch on our behalf. I can't say too much yet because they haven't released the information yet, but that most likely will happen sometime in late summer, early fall. So we're working with them right now, but we won't do anything before them. And then, so if we did anything else, it'll probably be later in the fall or early winter.
And what is the one headache that you'd like to share with everyone so they don't have to repeat it, but with getting everything set up, what would be the one big tip trick you'd want to share with getting into this work?
I think probably, one of the things that we, which was tough because we didn't even know who to talk to, but because of the fact that there are a lot of people that have done this now in the last 6 months, I would say like sit down and make your plan and try to get all the answers to all of the different questions you have figured out beforehand. Our first and even really our second collection was a lot of like, let's try this. Oh no, let's try that. Like the first time we minted something, we minted it on Ethereum. We paid $180. And we were like, okay, we can't do this for the next, 30 of them that we're going to launch. We need to figure out what to do. And then we started talking to somebody and they were like, hey, you should try the Polygon network. And we were like, what's that? And so we learned about it and learned what it would do, had a conversation internally, and then made the choice to go do it. So, but we lost $180 because of that. And so I think that's some of the stuff that I would try and, is really just like have a solid plan, know what you're going to spend, know what time it's going to take, what the investment's going to be. And part of that plan that I would not forget is also like what kind of community you're going to build and and who's going to manage that and like upkeep it. Full transparency, like we set up a Discord channel for this, but our person who was running that like has left the company, and we've kind of all taken turns to keep it moving, but like we don't have anybody dedicated to that right now, and that's been really hard for us. So I think that that would be something to know up front, is like have some of those things planned out. So
All right, well, if we don't have any more questions from the audience, I'll give 2 seconds. All right. Well, thank you again, Tim, for coming out and sharing your story about, taking this incredible leap into fundraising. I'll be surprised if, 10 years down the line, if NFTs aren't the way to do storytelling and fundraising at the same time.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for making it out. Be sure to be on the lookout for our email for our monthly webinars. And thank you again, Tim.
Yeah, thanks.